The Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, and I am absolutely disgusted with what we're seeing unfold today here in the House of Commons. Just for those that are watching at home and those that might be tuning in, I think it's important to understand what happened here today. Now, Madam Speaker, we put forward an order paper. On that order paper says what we plan to debate during the day. Conservatives would have seen on that order paper that we were taking the report back from committee with respect to Bill C-57, the Ukraine-Canada Free Trade Agreement. They knew that it was our intention to debate this today, and for the fourth or fifth or maybe even sixth time, they have once again used a concurrence motion to shut down debate on something they are absolutely afraid of talking about. And I find it even most egregious, Mr. Speaker, that this comes the day after the Ukrainian-Canadian Congress published an open letter to the Leader of the Opposition where they said the Ukrainian-Canadian Congress was disappointed to see the official opposition vote against the adoption of the Bill C-57, the implementation which would modernize the Canadian Free Trade Agreement. Ukraine needs assistance in strengthening economic resilience. Ukraine's government has stressed the modernization of this agreement would play an important role in this regard. The Ukrainian-Canadian Congress therefore asks the official opposition to revisit their position on Bill C-57 and vote to support the bill in the third reading. Hear, hear. They knew this was coming. They put forward this particular concurrence motion the day after the Ukrainian-Canadian Congress published this open letter. There are two red herrings on this matter, Madam Speaker, that I want to talk about. The first is the price on pollution, the carbon tax, and the Conservatives' so-called reasoning for not supporting this. I'll remind this House, you don't have to go that far back in the debates, Madam Speaker, to see that they never talked about the price on pollution. They never talked about the carbon tax the entire time that we first started debating this. They used every reason not to. As a matter of fact, the first time I gave a speech on this, Madam Speaker, I stood in this exact same position and spoke about it as though it was just a foregone conclusion that this entire House was going to support it. I stood here and I talked about it for 10 minutes, and then I sat down, and the member from Cumberland Colchester stood up and he started to talk about the agreement as though it was a woke legislation. I couldn't believe it. Almost fell off my... Go back and review the tape, Madam Speaker. I stood up in shock. I didn't know what was going on. And then we start to find out little bits of information start to make their way forward. Turns out that member and four other Conservatives traveled on a trip in June to London, where they had meetings with people who also sponsored some of their travel from the Danube Institute, a right-wing Hungarian think tank that has coincidentally also referred to the Canadian and Western approach towards Ukraine as being woke. Then they show up back here a couple months later and they start parroting the exact same information from that particular organization. So it's not a far stretch to understand why they're in this position. That's the first red herring. The second red herring, the newly developed one that just came out of committee a couple days ago, was when Conservatives tried to put forward amendments about arms. And the member from Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan kept saying, what Ukraine needs, Ukraine needs this. What Ukraine needs, Madam Speaker, is for Conservatives to start listening to them when they say they want this agreement. What Ukraine needs, Madam Speaker, is for Conservatives to listen to the Ukrainian-Canadian Congress when they say, we want this agreement. What Ukraine doesn't need, Madam Speaker, are Vladimir Putin and the Conservatives telling them what they need. That's not what they need. They need Conservatives to listen to them. And now they put it in an open letter that they just distributed yesterday. And once again, same tactics by the Conservatives. Two red herrings, and it's a red herring because I reminded the committee members when I was there earlier this week, I said, you know, funny, because there's $500 million in the 2022 budget for arms for Ukraine. You voted against that. Sure. But even if you can somehow justify, well, we're the opposition, we have to vote against the budget. I went back and looked at the speeches from the four members who were in that committee, and not a single one of them actually spoke about those arms during the budget debate. It's a red herring after red herring, looking for reasons not to support it.
I have the nod of the honourable member for Edmonton Centre to
Couple
point
items.
of order.
One,
Yes.
relevance. If the member wants to speak on the free trade, then he can speak on the free trade when that bill comes up. Not 1 second as he referred to public accounts. Further, the Speaker has made a ruling very clearly in this House repeatedly about such comments that he made suggesting that we are supportive of the ruthless dictator Putin. We clearly not, Madam Speaker. I ask you to bring this member back to the topic, but to end this rant and the hate against an unparliamentary language.
On the same point of order, the Honourable Deputy House Leader for the Government.
Madam Speaker, what we're debating right now is a concurrence motion of a report. We're not even debating the report. We're debating we're debating whether or not this motion should be concurred in. I'm speaking directly to the procedure as to why I think Conservatives are using this motion right now. I am extremely relevant on my points, Madam Speaker.
Member to touch on the yes, I saw the honourable member for New Westminster Burnaby. I'm coming, but I do invite the member to try to refer to parts of the relevance of the motion we're debating. The honourable member for New Westminster Burnaby.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And as you know, in terms of procedure and traditions in this House, when a party is blocking legislation, and in this case it's the Canada-Ukraine trade agreement that the Conservatives are blocking by their procedural delays, that is perfectly legitimate to be part of the debate. Not only the procedural motion that is blocking the Canada-Ukraine trade deal that the Conservatives are opposing, but also, yet, of course, the fact that they have moved this procedural motion to block the Canada-Ukraine trade deal. It's a perfectly legitimate point of debate.
We are entering on debate on the point of order, but I will give the honourable member for Edmonton West. The honourable member wants to comment on it? No. Duly noted, and I've invited the member to bring some relevance to his comments. But it is true that we are on a concurrence debate and not necessarily. Yes, the honourable member for
Second point about
the members referring
language, please.
Yes, to be wary of using comments that the Speaker has already judged inappropriate.
Madam Speaker, I have not said anything that is not factually true. The reality is that
the honourable member for Edmonton West.
Really ruled on this issue, and I ask that you enforce the rules of this House. It's ridiculous. This member should be ashamed. He repeatedly pushes this garbage upon this House.
The honourable member was referring to certain events, and that I think that is the point of what the honourable member is going to raise. No?
let's resume when you're ready.
The honourable member for New Westminster Burnaby.
Well, I just wanted to reiterate, Madam Speaker, it is perfectly legitimate to point out Conservatives are now blocking. They moved from opposing to now blocking the Canada-Ukraine trade deal.
Okay, we're getting into really debating on the point of order of a concurrence motion. So we are going back to the concurrence motion at hand. The honourable member has 5 minutes to finish his speech.
Madam Speaker, Vladimir Putin has tried to tell Ukraine what they need, and the world finds that
Well, I just wanted to reiterate, Madam Speaker, it is perfectly legitimate to point out Conservatives are now blocking. They moved from opposing to now blocking the Canada-Ukraine trade deal.
Okay, we're getting into really debating on the point of order of a concurrence motion. So we are going back to the concurrence motion at hand. The honourable member has 5 minutes to finish his speech.
Madam Speaker, Vladimir Putin has tried to tell Ukraine what they need, and the world finds that to be incredibly offensive. When I sat in the Trade Committee earlier this week, the member from Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan, tried to tell the rest of Canada what he believes Ukraine needs. My only point, Madam Speaker, was to say that Ukraine doesn't need either Vladimir Putin or the member from Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan, or any Conservative member to tell them what they need. They are very capable of telling us what they need. And what they've told us that they need, Madam Speaker, is for Conservatives to start supporting them, because Conservatives are not supporting them. I recognize the fact that this member and many other members feel really uncomfortable about this, and I encourage him to bring it up in his caucus meeting and to start talking about, hey guys, why aren't aren't we supporting Ukraine? Why do we have this? Why are we coming up with these red herrings to try to make it reasons for not doing it? And my point to that, Madam Speaker, is to tell you that I believe that the reason why they are doing this, Madam Speaker, is because there are elements within their caucus that support these alt-right narratives that encourage the world to turn against Ukraine. Madam Speaker, I'm going to tell you, Madam Speaker. Don't even take it just from me. Don't take it just from me. Take it from the leader of the opposition's very own supporters. It's funny, Madam Speaker. I published a poll on Twitter not that long ago where I said, "Do you support the leader of the opposition importing mega politics into Canada?" 91% of the respondents, over 20,000 respondents, said yes. People don't have to look for.
I am going to remind the honourable member that one of the rules of this House is to not to cause disruption, and we are having a debate on a concurrence motion. I would invite the member to bring to it, because I am seeing a lot of disruption in the House, and I really do not stand for it. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, where is the disruption coming from? Is the disruption coming from me pointing certain things out and people feeling uncomfortable about them? Yes, that's very possible. All I'm trying to say, Madam Speaker, is that I know for a fact, based on polling that I've done on social media, where it is very well understood and regarded that a lot of the member from Carleton, his supporters are all over my Twitter feed, and they voted, 91% of them said, over 20,000 votes said they support MAGA politics. I am not even trying to draw a loose link here. I am giving you a direct result. Conservative supporters, a lot of them support the alt-right movement. And as a result, these conservatives don't want to put themselves in a position where they could possibly lose some of those supporters to Maxime Bernier. That's what's going on here. Everything else is a red herring, Madam Speaker. I think Canadians can see through it. I think Ukrainians can see through it. I think the Ukrainian Canadian Congress can see through it. It's becoming extremely clear to Canadians that conservatives have turned their backs on Ukraine. Thank you, Madam Speaker.